The following episode was originally recorded for a private podcast as part of the Equipped for Life course. It has been edited for public release, but may reference training material from the Equipped for Life course.
We're going to be talking about social media today, and so I suggested Yeah, exactly. we've been internally talking about social media for months now. Sometimes ranting because it's no lie that it has been a hostile environment, and I suggested we start with a little bit of light conversation about the kinds of pages we enjoy following, and whether it's on Facebook or another medium. Just kind of talking about what we do like and why. My one I want to present is very interesting. It is a very funny meme page on Facebook. I want to kind of share this because
memes, right?
it's not a pro-life page. But dang, pro-life memes is hilarious. I want to share this because, first of all, I think they're very funny. I love them, but they're also very snarky and they're very niche. So this is a page which I would not necessarily share their memes on my own Facebook page, but when I scroll through, I laugh every time. It's called Ecclesia Dei Strikes Back.
I've never heard of this before.
I'm sure you haven't.
It's like a Catholic meme?
It is a Catholic page. So Ecclesia Dei stands for Church of God. Well, it's in Latin, Church of God. And so it's like the Church of God Strikes Back. It's Catholic plus Star Wars.
What? Whoa!
I'm not
great.
even kidding. That's why, yeah. So it's
I'm
Catholic
convinced.
plus Star Wars.
I have to follow this right now.
And, well, everything is kind of like a tongue-in-cheek joke for those who are extremely traditionally Catholic.
Yeah.
And so it'll have different characters saying lines, but it's applying it to the church. So if you're like a weird Catholic nerd like me, go follow Ecclesia Dei Strikes Back.
That's really funny. It's a page. I don't think I actually follow it because this suggestion for a light conversation was really hard for me because I don't use social media for that kind of thing very much. It's like I had to figure out how to find out what I follow because I have clicked follow a few times like here and there, and I don't follow that much. But there's another page. I think it's like Eastern Catholic memes or something that I've seen a bunch of those, and I think a lot of those are very, very funny. But I don't think I actually follow the page. So like now, but the things that I follow are nowhere near as cool or as interesting as that. I'm not going to convince people to follow it. I like Babylon Bee a lot.
That's the one I was
That's a page
do.
that I follow. I mean, everyone should follow Babylon Bee. I feel like I resonate with a lot of their things because
Let's talk about this for a little bit.
Okay. It's like growing up in Christian, like American Christian culture is a very particular kind of thing. And it includes things that are like very easy to make fun of.
Yes.
And I like that Babylon Bee makes fun of them in it's not that like Christianity is evil way.
Right.
It's just that Christians are kind of silly kind of way,
Right.
Which is true. And so I really like that. They do a lot on, like, they make fun of Calvinists a lot, which I think is really funny. They make fun of Arminians too. I think they're trying to be balanced, but it's just easier to make fun of Calvinists.
They're not Calvinists. It is so obvious that they're not Calvinists.
I kind of wonder if they're evangelical even because they make fun of like low church kind of Baptist things a lot.
Right.
I'm not sure. I'm very curious to know who's
to make
behind
fun
it.
of.
That's
I mean,
true,
how do you do a snarky thing about like an Eastern Orthodox liturgical service? Like
There's
harder.
definitely things there.
But I don't see it as
it's
often.
less relatable though. Like nobody's been to an Eastern Orthodox church
That's
in
true.
America.
That's probably the point. That's probably the reason they don't do it.
Less accessible. They're often very funny. Some of their posts are a little bit heavily on the conservative end in ways that, like, sometimes I even agree with kind of the premise, but I think what they're saying is going to like annoy my leftist friends anyway, so I might not like it.
Can you give me like because they're making fun of Christians always being on the right, or do you mean something?
Or like
different?
like an example would be like making fun of transgender either people or legislation or something. They do their satire thing in a way that's like it's kind of rude sometimes.
I haven't even usually enjoyed it when they do abortion. It's like
they've done at least one on abortion that I've liked, but I don't remember which one it was.
Yeah, I think there's like 1 out of 4 that I've seen that I was like, it's pretty good. I didn't share it, but because I feel like there's something different that I'm trying to accomplish when I'm sharing like a pro-life thing. Whereas like Babylon Bee, I want people to laugh. Yeah. And usually a little bit, I want some church leaders that I know to think about this thing that they're making fun of.
Sometimes it's good to be self-conscious.
So there's a recent one that I posted. Easily, this is the page that I share on my personal wall more than any other thing. And so the most recent one, because this so resonates with me as a worship leader, there's a lot of different things that I hate when it's done as a worship, like when I see other churches do it. But this is like maybe my number one on my hate list. So I'm just going to share with you because it's just so good. The headline is Worship Band Fixes Old Hymn by Adding Guitar Solo from Van Halen's Eruption. The worship band at Floodwaters Church reported that their attempt to fix one of those whack old hymns was successful. As the young group of talented musicians were able to smoothly incorporate Eddie Van Halen's Eruption guitar solo in between the third and fourth verses of Come Thou Fountain of Every Blessing at last Sunday's church service. According to people present, the third verse faded out with a beautiful lyric, "Here's my heart, oh take and seal it for thy courts above." Oh, the stage
brutal.
lights dimmed to a moody dark purple, and worship guitarist Ethan Tomahawk Hartford stepped to center stage.
Wow.
Beginning the brutal riff as drummer Mick Metronome Curtis supported with the introductory cymbal bit. But Hartford was flying solo from there on out, absolutely nailing the fast and intricate solo in order to lead people in praise of the Most High God. It was as if Eddie Van Halen himself descended upon the room in glory when still trembling worshipers said after the service, "That was the most powerful time of worship I've experienced since seeing Halen at the Palladium in 78. As Hartford's final chord rang out, the band seamlessly built right back into the fourth verse of the classic hymn, allowing audience members to respond to the manifestation of the glory of the Lord they had just experienced. I love stuff like this because really I hate it when people do guitar solos in worship. I just like I don't understand how you can argue for this for as if I don't know. I'm not going to get way into it. I've spent a lot of time thinking about
holding off on that tangent.
but this stuff resonates. Like just today, their thing is like I haven't even read the actual article. I'm not gonna read another one, but just the headline, I'm like, I experience this every Sunday. The headline is "Report: Everyone who sits behind you at church thinks you do not tithe because you give online." I'm like, this is how I feel because I haven't put anything in an offering basket in like 10 years. This is the 21st century, but like I'm like the people who are passing the baskets, like the volunteers, the ushers, or whatever. I'm like, are they judging me right now? Because it's like, man, the Brahms never tithe.
That's the kind of thing like I can't imagine if I was an atheist who's like never been to church coming up with that. Like that is a in Christian culture in America kind of a thing for sure. That's really good.
So I like the Babylon Bee. I don't feel like there's that many other like fun things I follow. Like at least they don't show up on Facebook. Like there's a lot of YouTube channels that I follow and watch their stuff for fun. Like a lot of time that's my leisure time is I'll get on YouTube and I've subscribed to a bunch of things. I'll just go through my subscriptions and look for a couple of things to watch. Like I'll do that. They don't usually show up on my Facebook feed though.
One of the things that's been going on for a while at ERI is I write a lot of the blog posts, but I hate talking to people in the comments. And so
this is true.
There's this regular thing that's been happening for years where I'll write a blog post and I'll give it to Josh because I don't know how to do any of the formatting stuff. So Josh or someone else will do the formatting. And then at some point I'll get an email from Josh saying, "Hey, you really should interact with one of these commenters. Some of these comments are worth actually interacting with." And I resist and I don't want to do it. Yep. And Josh is aware of the fact that it is actually important if you're trying to gain a social media following to interact with your commenters sometimes. And I hate it because I just hate people online. I hate how it makes people into more argumentative jerks. Sometimes, not always. But
not you, of course. If you're listening to this.
I think like everybody. I think social media makes people evil, and we'll get into it. But for now, just keep that on the shelf. And so I don't like talking to commenters. Sometimes Josh makes me, and so. There aren't a lot of areas where Josh like pulls rank in day to day and ERI operations. I think this is one of the areas where it's like, all right, you have to like respond to commenters sometimes.
Please, I beg you, if we're going to be about dialogue, let's do a dialogue instead of a monologue.
Dialogue sucks online. Anyway, so this has been this ongoing thing for years. Yeah. And one day this summer, I had written a blog post, and for some reason, I got a notification that someone had commented, and I just like in my email inbox, and I read that. It's like, oh, I can interact with that commenter.
Yeah.
And so I started talking to this person online, and then Josh G-chatted me later that day. And he's like, oh, look at you. You're talking to someone on the internet without even being told. It was just kind of funny. We're having a kind of fun interaction. And I talked with this person who's a regular commenter on our blog, unfortunately, for
Wow.
like a day or two. We went back and forth a number of times, and it started off very reasonable. It's like, oh, this is a good. Oh, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I know who you're talking
It started off a totally reasonable interaction, and then she turned into this obnoxious internet troll.
Right.
And it's just like taking what I was saying out of context and being just horribly, horribly rude. Everything horrible about talking to people about the internet, it like instantiated in this one person.
Yeah.
And so I backed off. It's like, all right, I'm not doing this anymore. Josh and I were going back and forth on GChat over this like day or two, and I was just like venting because I needed to get it out. Like, I hate the internet. Oh, people on the internet are the worst. I never want to talk to people on the internet. Grr, and just like all of my bile is just spewing all over Josh on social
I'm like,
media.
this person is setting me back. I've got to try to get
Right.
to talk to these
It's like,
people. How am I going to do that now?
I'm not going to do it for another 6 months. And then the incredible timing, like a couple of hours later, Josh talks with Tina Whittington at Students for Life of America on the phone. And I want to tell everyone about that phone call.
Yeah, she said,
a couple hours later.
hey, I want to let you know, I want to invite you guys to come and speak at the Students for Life conference again. We're doing it really differently this time, at least in DC. We're going to have a whole bunch of workshops, so it's not going to be so many like people on main stage. I don't want you to do the main stage thing this time, but I do want you to do a workshop. It's going to be like 4 or 5 just like apologetics style kind of workshops going on, like simultaneously. I want you to do one on bodily rights. And for the first time, we want to invite Tim also to speak at the Students for Life conference. And so we've got all these workshops already planned. We just want you to fill them. So we want you to do advanced like philosophy stuff. And then we want Tim to speak on social media. And I just like died inside.
No way.
Because I'm like, now I've got to tell Tim that Students for Life wants him to speak at this thing and talk about what to do on social media, and probably they don't want him to just say, don't
do it.
stay off. Turn off Facebook.
Oh,
And so, yeah, I had to go to
So
Tim
ridiculous.
and be like, hey, guess what Tina wants you to speak on? It's really kind of funny. One day it'll be funny.
I think it's like at some level it's kind of it's a cool thing. That'll be my most high profile speaking event yet. I'm not marketing myself very much as a speaker these days, and so those kinds of requests don't come in that much. But like of all of the topics, I hate talking to people on social media.
So the
And
thing, like,
so-
you kind of had to get what you want to
Yeah.
say cleared, right?
Well, so I emailed Tina back the next day. I was like, okay, I want you to understand I'm happy to do this.
Right.
And I think if you have me on this is a panel discussion. I think I would contribute really well. I think I have good thoughts on social media dialogue stuff. But we should probably talk before we like finalize this, because I suspect that my perspective on this is a little more pessimistic about like the value of pro-life dialogue online than maybe yours is. And I don't want to like show up and have you be frustrated and feel blindsided. So eventually I did talk with Amanda Lord, who's their, what's her role? Marketing, social
She
media,
does
or
a lot of
something
the
or other.
social media stuff.
Yeah.
She's in the communications department, I think.
She's going to be the one that's moderating this panel. And so we finally got on the phone. It's like, all right, so here's my views and here's why it's all terrible and it makes people evil and vicious. And so if you don't want me to speak, then no hard feelings, I'd be happy to. And she's like, oh yeah, that's exactly why I asked for you. Apparently Amanda and I had a conversation years ago, I don't remember at all, in which I vented about social media. And she's like, that's great. And that's exactly what I want in this panel. So it's
so cool.
actually okay, but it was a little weird for a while. And the timing of that happening was really bizarre. I could figure out exactly when this happened because I remember immediately after getting this request, like, okay, well, I guess I should spend more time trying to figure out how to solve this social media problem. And I have spent a lot of time, like, in my head, I have lost sleep trying to think through what could be done to make social media dialogue better ever since this happened in the summer. And almost immediately after this happened, the Charlottesville stuff happened.
Yeah.
And that was a particularly really hard time for social media interaction on Facebook.
Yeah.
And that week, I spent a lot of time pouring through comment threads and looking through, okay, the reaction from the left and the kind of response to that on the right, and watching just awful dialogue happen. As we've mentioned before, the racism topic is a particularly hard one, I think, for people to do right now. And that week in particular was difficult. And so, like, in general, this year, like, we're at an all-time low when it comes to people dialoguing well on social media. Our president has kind of inflamed things a little bit,
just a little,
from time to time, and it's really, really hard right now. So this is a much-needed podcast, and I think our goal for this kind of part one is to focus on trying to talk through the kinds of problems that we see on social media. We'll unpack a little bit why it makes everyone evil. And part two, we'll be done talking about the bad news and get to the good news and some good suggestions for how to do it better. Because, like, despite both your and my initial reaction when we got that speaking request, our view is not actually never talk to anybody on the internet.
Right.
We kind of joke that it is.
Right.
It's not actually. I've had really good interactions with people online, even people that I've disagreed with, even when we're dialoguing in a public comment thread. That has happened, and that's been really valuable. But it's really hard to do well, and I've certainly done it badly as well.
I talked about this a bit on the first Relational Apologetics podcast. I mean, I feel like so much of who I am as a pro-life person has been affected by social media. It was in that private Facebook abortion debate group, and I don't really want to retell the story. If you want to hear that story, you can go listen to that podcast. But, I was in this place for, 9 or 12 months or something, interacting with the same, small group of pro-choice people for a long time. And that helped do a thing for me that I think basically the more people who could experience the same thing or kind of have the change in mindset, the better off we'll be. Because what happened for me was I began humanizing pro-choice people at a level that I hadn't before. It had been one thing to go out and hang out with Justice for All on a college campus somewhere and talk with pro-choice people face to face, sometimes for hours. But it was another thing to really get to know these people for who they were, get past the avatar, get past, we're just on Facebook, and really find out what's kind of going on for these people under the surface, and get a sense for, like, what are the kinds of things that pro-life people say that are really obnoxious to them, or, like, kind of really rub them the wrong way, even things that like I wouldn't have been as sensitive to before. There's another pro-life person in there that I'm not going to name because he's a little bit of there's some people certainly following this podcast who are probably like Facebook friends with him. He was in that thing too. And sometimes he would really rub these people the wrong way. Eventually got himself basically kicked out of the group. But there were like some of the early times, the things that he said that really rubbed people the wrong way, like I wouldn't have naturally been like, oh yeah, that was really obnoxious guy, But
from your perspective, wasn't that bad?
Right. But then as they were explaining why, especially, as far as just like pulling the curtain back, there was also a kind of a simultaneous, much smaller, closed secret group, whatever it was, of just the admins. I had been made an admin. I was one of the few kind of pro-life admins in the thing. And so it was me and one other, I think there might have been one other pro-life person. I don't remember. I actually might have been the only pro-life admin. But there's I think probably 5 admins total. So every once in a while, if things were getting kind of nutty, we're talking in the secret place where only we can see, and kind of talking about, do we need to delete posts? Do we need to moderate?
Mm-hmm.
What do we need to do? And then we take an action. And as they were having, we took deleting posts or blocking people or kicking people out of the group, really, really seriously. So there's a whole discussion going on about why is this pro-life person, what is it that he is doing on this kind of habitual, basis that is so frustrating for the pro-choice members and kind of causing the entire mood of the group to be less dialogue friendly as kind of this cumulative effect. And them being forced to kind of really make their case, explain here's what's going on for me. It's not just I don't like that guy. At that point they didn't. But what is it exactly what caused them to not like him? And it's oh, I see it. Someone just, I don't know, veil, whatever.
The scales fell from your eyes.
The scales fell from my eyes, whatever metaphor you want for that. And anyway, so just there were a lot of things about that experience that caused me to be in a place that was having a better respect for the humanity of pro-choice people, for the persons they are, not just for this one view, but kind of thinking about pro-choice people more holistically.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's really helpful and important. I haven't had the kind of experience of a group like that. I think a lot of the usefulness of Facebook that I've found is through just asking questions. Mm-hmm. In general, at least in the last 2 or 3 years, I have not done a whole lot of arguing with people on Facebook. Yeah. A little bit more in the last 6 months because of the speaking thing. Something that I found to be very helpful is just putting a question out there, being okay, here's an article that says he kind of espouses a conservative view on the transgender issue. And I agree with this, and I can't think of a good counter argument to it. I don't understand the other side very well. So could people help me? And I had really, really good, healthy interaction and kind of good dialogue happen in that comment thread, because it wasn't a, this is why such and such is true. It's like, I want to understand. Facebook is actually a fairly good place for that, if you have the kind of trust to make that happen.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that's not what's going on. Oftentimes what's going on is that it's going to come up in a comment thread, or you're not going to be the one that starts the post where there's an opportunity for abortion dialogue to happen. But that's a helpful thing to do where you can work against the harms of Facebook.
Yeah, I know we're wanting to move more of the practical dialogue tips or the practical social media tips or whatever to the next episode. But I think this is the thing that you're doing that you're finding to be helpful, I think is almost always going to be one of the most effective ways to share any kind of like an article or a video, if assuming it's like on politics or something like that on Facebook, because you're differentiating yourself from, like I remember a long time ago, Scott Klusendorf, in an interview that I did with him back on the old Life Report podcast, kind of talked about the difference between crusaders and learners. He's like, you don't want to, in the context, he's talking about the people that he doesn't talk to versus who he does talk to. He doesn't talk to crusaders, he does talk to learners. And when you're saying, okay, I'm being transparent about here's my view, I do agree with this article, or I don't agree with this article. I don't know of a good counter argument to it, but I bet there probably is one that I'm just not aware of because I don't know enough. I would love to learn. Like you're saying, I'm not posting this because I want to be crusader. I want to convert everyone in one social media post. You're saying, here's maybe a good starting point for a dialogue, because maybe this article isn't super obnoxious or whatever. It's like hopefully somewhat thoughtful and taking the other side seriously. And so here's a good starting point. And here's the tone that I'm trying to project. And I think you're like, a lot of times people are going to react and kind of mirror that. And so then you're going to have a better comments thread, because people who are wanting to be really caustic might just move on. And then the other people who really do want to comment, they kind of have to do a little bit of gut check, or at least hopefully it encourages them to do a gut check, and then you have a better comment thread. Like I think you could share ERI blog articles like that. You could say, here's an interesting post. I kind of agree with this, or maybe I don't. Maybe I hate this article or whatever. Like you share it, and you're asking a question that kind of gets conversation going. I think that's great.
I'd like to talk about a couple of things that make dialogue on Facebook problematic, or at least challenging. And one of those I've realized is listening is very difficult to do in a comment section. And I think the reason for that is we've all seen those articles that have been shared or pictures or something, and then there's like 500 comments below, and people are trying to talk to each other in that comment section, but there's like so much up above that they don't bother reading all the comments that have already been said, and like other people start jumping in the middle of a conversation. So I think that makes listening very difficult. The other thing I think that makes it really difficult is that once you kind of post a comment or something, it's being read by a lot of other people besides the person you're directing it at.
Yeah.
I think that makes it really complex.
Yeah, you're having a public conversation, like as opposed to a private conversation. Like if you're talking to a friend on the phone, or you invite a friend over for coffee or something, or you go to Starbucks, like, okay, you're having a one-on-one interaction. Maybe someone else could hear. Could be the CIA if you're on the phone, or the NSA, I guess, but not very likely. Or someone could overhear you at the coffee shop. But it's generally like you're focused on it's a one-on-one conversation. And generally at an outreach event, most of the time those can be one-on-one conversations, although people can join in. Right. And this is like it's more like you're on stage and there's other people watching.
Yeah. This is one of the few things that like College Humor has done a good job lately of doing funny videos on. Like I used to, College Humor was amazing back in the day. Like they had a heyday and they're out of it now, because like a lot of the most talented people went to go like write for SNL and late night shows. So they've got like new people and like they're fine, but it's not what it was. It's not back when they're making like the hilarious Batman videos and things like that. But I think the thing that I've enjoyed most generally is that they kind of, and they've done a bunch of these, they kind of figure out like this kind of works, where they're trying to parody the way Facebook actually is to people versus the way people act like it is. And so it'll be, and so they'll do a skit where it's like taking Facebook seriously the way it actually is. So like
Right.
they did one kind of making fun of when people do their big, I am leaving Facebook, but they do this big like public announcement. And so it's like this thing where like, okay, but here's what this is actually like. It's like a person like standing up on the table. I'm getting off of Facebook, everybody. It's no big deal. I don't really care. If you think about it, it's like this whole thing. The way people act is like, this is like really easy to kind of make fun of. Like it's like the oversharing thing. A lot of people overshare on Facebook too. And it's just this kind of awkward, like, okay, you're acting like Facebook is this one thing, but it's like, this is a big public bulletin board. You just like put a thing up at Starbucks on the bulletin board and you're acting like, oh my gosh, people are like offended. Like, I don't understand. Like that kind of thing.
Yeah. And that's one of the big problems but that also intersects with another major problem that I used to not think about as much. And in the last few years in particular, been really cognizant of, which is the mindset that Facebook creates. A few years ago, when I would think about the difference between an in-person dialogue and a Facebook dialogue, I would just think, it's kind of like having a dialogue on stage with other people watching. But it goes so much deeper than that. Like that's one aspect of the problem, but it has more to do. Like the thing that I'm mostly conscious of these days is, like in our material, we talk about dialoguing in a way that helps people to feel emotionally safe and help people to become receptive, like in their mindset. Yeah. People are in a combative mode. It doesn't matter how smart your argument is, they're not going to hear you. Right. And Facebook is kind of like it naturally puts people in unvirtuous mode because even if they're not trying to be, it's just the structure of it makes you think about your image. Yeah. Like you can't help but think about your image when you're on Facebook. Yeah. And I got to tell you, like that's certainly the case for me. I can't help that. In person, I'm different. In a one-on-one conversation in Outreach, I'm not thinking nearly as much about, I wonder if I look really cool or really smart here. Right. But on Facebook, it gets us thinking about that in a way that's even different if you're having a public conversation. If I'm having a public conversation, if I'm seated at a table full of people, and I'm having and I'm interacting with people, I am less focused on my image there than I am on Facebook. Because on Facebook, I've spent all this time thinking through what's my profile picture going to be. And when I'm thinking through Facebook statuses, it's like, oh, well, is this going to make me sound smart? And I'm going to edit it 7 times to make sure I don't have a typo because that's going to make me seem dumb. And I don't want to seem dumb. I'm managing my image and I'm sculpting my image in such a way that people think well of me. Either I want them to think that I'm smart or think that I'm good looking, so I like have a nicer profile picture and not have one where I look kind of more disheveled, even though that's less realistic to what I usually look like. Or I'm trying to say smarter things that are more carefully edited. Everything about the Facebook medium puts me I'm in image management mode. Mm-hmm. And that is the worst mode to be in if you're trying to dialogue about something.
And I think psychologically, we are not prepared for having conversations in that sort of image mode. We aren't raised in a way where we are taught how to have conversations in person. We are taught by our parents to have good manners, like things like that are we are raised and told how to act, but not with social media. When you create a Facebook page, you're diving in. There's no, this is not a diary.
No instruction.
This is not right. This is how to not be obnoxious. Like you don't learn that sort of thing slowly, kind of jumping in with both feet. And for someone in my position, I've been on Facebook for a very long time from a very young age. I think
you're younger than us. That's right. That's
yes. So I created my Facebook when I was 12. Whew. So if you can imagine,
I was like 21.
And the other thing is, many kids are starting to get a Facebook at that age or even younger, and so by the time,
yes, terrible idea.
Which I'm not advocating for. I think it's a terrible idea too. They just created like a Facebook Messenger for kids and everything. They're trying to like, it's kind of crazy.
Oh, I'm not okay with that.
It's evil.
Not okay.
It's terrible.
Anyway, so like there's things going on where I think for someone in my position where I've kind of grown up with that like social media platform, I look at Facebook in a very different way than maybe if my grandma created one tomorrow and was like, I'll just like look at my grandkids. I don't know. She's looking at it differently.
Yeah.
So it's complicated.
Yeah. I want to follow up with you on that if I could.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think seems to be common for people that are newer to Facebook, I have certainly done this and I'm embarrassed about it, but now I don't do it anymore. But also I think some people, even if they're familiar with it, they might just do this anyway, which is making kind of passive aggressive posts.
Yes.
Like, I'm not even going to tell you what my day was, but it was terrible. like that kind of post. Or like, someone really offended me today. I'm not going to name any names. Like that kind of thing.
Right.
What is it about Facebook that causes people to do those kinds of things and not notice how awkward that is? I have no idea.
It's a really weird thing because it's like an overshare happening with that situation. And I think it's not just Facebook. I think it's also our culture where we don't know how to communicate with people in our lives and trust them to like debrief. Like that sort of, I had a bad day. Today's like was awful, but I'm not going to talk about it. Like, I think what would be healthy psychologically is for us to come home to our spouse or roommates or whatever and talk it through,
Right.
not go to Facebook, right? It's this strange thing that's happened.
I think there's like certainly a thing where like people are wanting everyone to be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry you had a bad day," or "I'm so sorry that person."
They want
offended-"
affirmation.
That's a lot
You're
of
so
what it
brave.
is. Yeah, you're so brave. Thoughts and prayers. But there's this other thing going on, I think, where this is like a common. I think all of us sometimes get in this mode where we're thinking incorrectly about the thing. And I was I don't remember what podcast I was listening to in the last couple of days where they kind of talked a little bit about this. But this idea of like, a lot of like, so like think about the people that are posting like a picture of like every meal that they have, and they're like here's what I'm going to Winco today to go to the buy the food or whatever, like those people, and like every time they get like 2 likes, for like their mom and their girlfriend or whatever, it's like, and that's it. But like they keep doing it. I think a lot of times people kind of get a sense where like everyone feels a little bit more like a celebrity now. Like everything you do is important and nobody cares. What everyone what no one is noticing, like you don't care about what all your other friends do every moment of their lives, but you think that they care about everything that you are doing and everything that you think. Like nobody cares about anybody. No, like not at that level. At that level, nobody cares unless you're an A-list celebrity where like there's actual paparazzi looking for you. In fact, and that's not some of that's actually fake now. They've actually got A-listers now that are paying fake paparazzi to hang. Yes, this is the thing. To like hang out in front of the club so they can and just act like they're a bigger deal than they are. Okay, so sometimes that's not even right. But certainly, trust me, if you're listening to this podcast, no one really cares. They care a little bit. I think sometimes people legit might care if like something really, really special happens to you. I'm not saying no one ever cares about anything going on for you, but like at the minutia level of
when you get engaged, they care.
Yeah.
That's about it, though.
I'm gonna post. I haven't posted it yet, but I'm gonna post a little video of my son William climbing a rock wall for the first time, and I'm gonna post it because it was amazing. Because I couldn't believe my eyes watching this thing because it's his first time ever doing it. He not only got to the top, but he purposely made it harder for himself by skipping like half the things and being like, I just want to like climb on this, and so you actually get to see. I'm gonna like look at this second. He's having to figure out how do I do this like crazy like reach like thing that he like I couldn't pull off, and he's working it out in his mind. You can see it. It's like I think that every once in a while there are things like that that are cool, and if people really like you, they want to see a little bit of that. They don't care every day though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, of course, something like an engagement or wedding photos, like people love that sort of thing. Yeah. But what I think about when people are oversharing on Facebook is the pre-social media, I'm going to show you 200 photos from my vacation, awkward moment, right? So it's kind of like that. Like, obviously, I'm going to show you the 200 photos from my vacation is an in-person, awkward, you can't get out of it, where
get out the slide projector. Everyone look!
Exactly. Facebook, you scroll past it, right? But like it's a similar thing, but now we're just doing that every day. And it's super awkward.
I want to go back to the thing that you were talking about before about Facebook making you virtuous because you're kind of always image management or kind of brand management. So I want to attempt to defend a little bit of that.
I'm sure some of it is defensible. It's good to not just be a buffoon. You have to be somewhat mindful of how you come across. So when I put deodorant on, that's because I want to not smell. Right. And how much of that is my own personal altruism and how much of that is I want people to like me, I don't know. But even that I want people to like me thing, that seems different than... Please affirm me. It's different. So I'm not as extreme in my criticism as I probably come across. Like certainly some level of image management is okay. Don't put a picture of yourself on your profile picture where you're picking out a booger or something in your nose. Like that's weird and gross. Like you don't want to be weird and gross.
So I'm going to add a little. So maybe this won't be that controversial, but I have a debate. I'm going to add some nuance. But right now, I want to stop right now, and I'm talking to you, the listener, right now. I want you to do a self-check right now because I think just like 10 seconds ago, you also were laughing at the people who want too much affirmation on Facebook, and I want you, pause the podcast and think for a minute about where this is also true in your life, because it is super easy to laugh at everybody else doing this thing. And I think we all do this sometimes. I totally want affirmation. So I think we all do this sometimes, and you are not going to grow. You're just like making fun of all the other people that do it all the time. And you're never, anyway. So now that you've unpaused the podcast.
That was a very good humility virtue signal, Josh.
Oh, gosh. Are we doing virtue signaling in this episode?
We'll get into virtue signaling later.
Okay.
Keep going.
I
just couldn't resist.
Not really outlined this one, so I was wondering if we're actually going to get there.
Yeah.
So here's a couple of things that even though we've been talking about the image management thing a lot for the last 4 years, here are some of the things that I'm doing on purpose, and some of this I might be managing too much.
Sure.
But a couple of things that I'm being intentional about. Maybe some of this fits more in practical tips too. I don't know, but I want to interact with this idea of how do we balance the image management thing, because we don't want to be unvirtuous. We want to be more virtuous, and figuring out how to be more virtuous on Facebook, I think is, as Rachel said, it's really complicated. So here's a few of the things that I'm doing. I'm trying to be careful not to act like I'm an expert on topics that I'm not an expert on. Mm-hmm. I'm an expert on very, very few things. I think basically a couple of styles of music, like worship, contemporary worship, I think I'm basically an expert on. I think abortion, and I think that's basically it. I think that's I think those are all the things. I've got a bunch of other opinions, and some of them I've spent more time thinking about than others. I spent more time thinking about waterboarding than I have global warming, for example. And it doesn't mean one's more important than the other necessarily. I might just be too ignorant about global warming, but I have thought about I'm in virtue mode now. It's not like I've never thought about global warming. I agree. It might. You're right. I'm sorry. You're right. Okay, it might.
One of the worst things about talking about virtue signaling that's going to happen in this podcast is once you start talking about it and you're thinking about it, you see it everywhere. It's like talking about humility. It's like you can't be humble anymore because you're so self-conscious.
But as we're probably going to say, sometimes you have to virtue signal a little bit, and I don't know what to do.
I have suggestions. All
right. So anyway, okay. What's the point I'm trying to make? Okay,
so
I'm trying not to act like an expert on topics that I'm not an expert on, because, and this is not original, a really good friend of mine, John Fincher, said this one time, and I was like, okay, that's really, really true, because I think a lot of times that I'm annoyed by people is when they're acting like suddenly they're an expert because they read an article,
right?
And now they're, now they can tell, it's like, I just read this article about this dumb thing about the iPhone. Let's just do a really stupid example. I can't believe all the full-time Apple engineers who understand how all this works did this stupid thing. Come on.
Cue the Game of Thrones meme. Brace yourself. Everyone's an expert on such and such now.
Yeah. So
right now it's tax law, because the GOP tax plan, which I don't understand at all.
Yep.
And for some reason, most of my Facebook friends really understand it at a deep level.
No, they
kind
don't.
of seems like they do.
No, they don't. And this is closer to image management. I think I'm still trying to figure out what to do about this. And we talked about this a little bit off the air, I think, during one of the recent Course podcast recording sessions. Was there's topics that I'm becoming more passionate about.
Yeah.
That I'm not an expert on yet, but I have spent a lot of time reading about it, and I have some grasp of where both sides are coming from, but I'm not posting just basically for image management. I don't know if now I should be the guy that tries to say something thoughtful about everything that maybe actually I could say something thoughtful about.
Sure.
A lot of the people who follow my work are following me because of pro-life work. And so, to just take the example that's like been in my mind lately, like I'm becoming more and more passionate about this net neutrality debate. I still think I might be wrong. There is an argument from the other side that I still don't have I don't know of a very good response to, but I'm fairly confident at this point that they are wrong. I just don't know exactly why. And I haven't said anything about it online because I don't know if I should.
Yeah.
I don't know. What am I? So first of all, it's important for ERI to exist. And ERI only exists if we've got a lot of people who are excited about our work and are giving financially to it. And I lost a donor and a friend over the Trump thing. We didn't vote for Trump. We were public about it. Or at least you and I didn't. I know Rachel did, and there's a whole thing. You can listen to episode 7. We talk about all that. But I had a guy literally basically accuse me of not being a Christian because I didn't vote for Trump. It was that bad. And he was a monthly donor, and now he's not. And we might have lost more. I don't know. At least none that told me so. Besides that, but I'm thinking okay, there are a lot of Republicans that don't like the net neutrality thing, and they would probably say that's a bad phrase. I don't know. It's the one that everyone uses though. And so what? Even if they're wrong, am I just going to offend a whole bunch of people without I'm not going to make that much of a difference anyway by saying something, but then there's also a part of me that feels like I'm hiding a part of myself, which feels inauthentic, and I don't know what to do about it.
It's a great example. It's a good current example, and it's like the people behind you think that you don't give to your church thing. It's the kind of thing that I resonate with that.
There's a little bit about this where this is going to sound dumb, but I believe it when I say some of this is more of a problem for me than most of probably the people listening.
Sure.
There is a thing where we're running a nonprofit. We do have a bit of a platform. People Google me. Not everyone Googles everybody. A lot of times people are the only ones Googling themselves, and I don't Google myself. But I have to be more thoughtful about what I say in public, because if I say something really bad, my ministry could be over, and that could affect your guys' lives. And I know I really don't think I'm a very big deal. And so I think I'm a bigger deal than I actually am. I think I'm a medium deal within the pro-life movement, which all the big deals in the pro-life movement are basically complete non-big deals to the rest of the world, basically. That's
weirdly
pretty
true.
low on the totem pole. But so some of this I'm having to be more analytical than some people are. But I think everyone, I want you having a good influence on your friends. And so you shouldn't be well, as long as I'm not running a nonprofit, then I don't have to think about it. You should think about it too.
I think it's pretty applicable to everybody. I want to try to give you some encouragement here. I think even for people who aren't running a nonprofit or something, there's a certain level where if you are constantly making 17 different issues, you're just posting every article that happens on those 17 different issues, you're going to get unfollowed. People are going to stop listening to you. People only have so much attention span.
You become obnoxious white noise.
Yeah, kind of. Whereas if you're the guy who one of your passions is net neutrality, and so you post a thing on net neutrality once a week, but the only other thing that you post on that's controversial is abortion, there's some limit there. I know it's more complicated for you.
Right.
For other people, I think there's a similar principle that does apply still. You can have a couple things, and you kind of become a little bit known within your community as you're a person who thinks about these things. You've probably read a fair bit about these things, but you can't do that with everything.
Yeah.
At least most people can't do that with everything. So I think that does apply to other people.
Okay.
And also, it's in your defense, and forgive the analogy. Make a celebrity analogy. I know you don't like that.
No.
There's a certain kind of thing that's appropriate about you not using your, celebrity, kind of your platform for things other than abortion. And then I haven't figured out how to manage that either. Because I know that I'm annoyed whenever Ben Affleck says anything political, right? That's not why we know who he is.
Right.
He's a pretty good screenwriter, or at least he was one time, and he won an Academy Award for it. And he's a really good actor. And so, if I want to learn about acting, I'm going to ask Ben Affleck. There's nothing in his platform that gives him any particular credibility about politics, or name any other actor. They don't have that kind of position, but they're always talking about it. And that kind of annoys me. And so there's something to be said for, if people are following you for X, then don't use that to like make them talk about why.
Right.
And like that's not a hard and fast rule, and I don't want to be obnoxious with it, but there is something there.
Yeah. I think I agree there's something there, although I've kind of gone back and forth on the example you just made, because like I used to be like totally, oh, I hate it whenever actors get like political at the Academy Awards or whatever. I'm less annoyed by it now because I think like I'm putting myself in the shoes of the actors like, yeah, but I've read 10 books about this thing and I'd have nothing to do in the next 2 months before my next movie. And I'm become really passionate and I have a voice too. I've got free speech too. Like there's something where I feel like I think I'd be fine if they kind of start out by saying that they've got credentials on this that's different than they were in Star Wars. Like if they kind of say, you know, I know this is a controversial topic. I've been thinking a lot about this lately. I've got one little thing that I'd like to contribute. I think I basically at this point don't have too much of a problem with that. I'll let Tim respond real quick and then Rachel.
It's one thing if they write an op-ed. Like, that's fine. Like, they've got free speech. They should have the right to write an op-ed, too. Right. And the fact that more people are going to read that because they were in Star Wars, like, fine. It just kind of is what it is.
Right.
But it's different when they use their platform, like, at the Oscars to make a political statement. Like, that's a different category.
It's supposed to be about a different thing or something like that.
Like that's very specifically you're being honored for your acting.
Right.
Like, there's it's different. Like,
I think that's a fair point.
Yeah, so the example that comes to mind for me is Ashton Kutcher, because there was a video, got a lot of attention, and this was a couple months back, because he has a lot of work he does in, I think it's human trafficking for children.
That sounds right, yeah.
Yeah, and in that video, he was very specific about this, where he said, I want you to listen to me as someone who has done a lot of time and effort and work in this human trafficking. Not because I am an actor. I mean, he says that in the video. I wonder if we could find it.
That's fantastic.
You know, and I have incredible respect for that. And so I think there's kind of a gray area for this, because let's say Ashton Kutcher gets brought on Ellen's show.
Sure.
And he's talking about his upcoming movie, but he also wants to talk about his sort of like nonprofit ministry he does or whatever. I think that that's fair, but I agree with what Josh is saying. If you are up there at the Oscars, or, you know, Tim, you know, you're getting your award, I think that that's not the time to say Black Lives Matter, something, even if you are doing work there or you have read about it.
I don't want to be overly picky about, you know, like, oh, you know, I'm going to be more friendly towards things that agree with me. I think if I suddenly turned into an actor, which is a very, very weird possible world, not very possible, and I won an Oscar, I don't think that I should use that platform to make a big statement about abortion.
Yeah.
I'm open to having my mind change about that, and there's a part of me that wants to think otherwise, because I'm annoyed when people on the other side do it to me. It's like, oh, return fire, but like that just seems wrong to me. I don't like that. I don't know.
There's a weird thing that celebrities have to deal with at a level that certainly I don't, and most people don't, where anything they do can become a thing. I was just reading this amazing story last night that I guess been around for years, but I just came across it last night. Anthony Hopkins sent Bryan Cranston a super congratulatory letter. I think
it's like a fan letter.
It was like a fan letter, or like an email or something. They sent to Bryan when they finished Breaking Bad. It basically said, "Yours was the best acting I've ever seen, ever." And he said, "I want you to share this with the cast of Breaking Bad. Congratulations. Top notch. You guys just did so great." And it got leaked. Not by, I think, Bryan Cranston, but someone else on, like, either in the crew meeting where Bryan shared that, or maybe one of the other cast members leaked it. And Anthony Hopkins was so frustrated that he's like, this was not a PR thing. I don't want anyone to see this. This was for Bryan and the cast. And as a result, he has publicly said, I don't write these letters anymore. He said, I am never writing something like this again.
Because he's not looking for attention.
He's not looking for attention. So it's like, I was just meaning for this to be a nice thing. Because everyone celebrates how, like, he's like one of the best actors of our time. This is one of the best compliments he can give someone. And he said, and now, like, and
it's a special
he
thing.
literally, like, I think it's literally, and some idiot put it on the internet. And it's really frustrating. And so I don't do letters like this anymore. Like, there's a thing like that, like, we don't have to deal with. But at the same time, we have totally been publicly attacked a few times because of things like even fairly innocuous, like things that seem like they shouldn't be that controversial that we've said, because the pro-life movement is what it is sometimes. And so we're like, the fact that I know that there are at least a few people who would at least be fairly, that they would not be real sad if we were to get sort of taken down some notches in the movement. Yeah. Like, wow, look at this, this is proof that, the ERI people are X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
Makes me a lot more careful than I used to be.
Yeah, that's fair.
The other thing I was thinking about when you were talking about, you said there's this interesting thing where you're in image management mode on social media, like sometimes in a way that you're just usually not when you're in person.
Even when there's other people around.
Even when there's other people around. And I feel like there's a part of that I think is very understandable to me, because I feel like I identify with it. Like if there are certain things, like I've shared, of all the different public things that ERI does, this podcast is where I will get the most personal. This is the only place I've ever said anything outside of you about net neutrality, and I've said something pretty vague. But I haven't said, I'm not probably doing any social media posts or any selfies in front of Verizon store protests or something like that. I'm probably not doing that thing, and some other people are. But there's a part of that where, like, generally the people who get to know the most personal things about me are the people that are right in front of me. There's a trust thing that happens. Like, you can choose, if you're sitting across from a person at lunch, do I trust this person enough to say this thing that's more vulnerable? I think it's like a really healthy thing. Like, you shouldn't start by saying super personal things when you're first getting to know someone. There's a trust building thing going on. And as you share more and more vulnerable things with them, and they take that trust seriously, then you can trust them with more things if you choose to, because there's other good things about the relationship or whatever. Whereas if you might, in a comment thread, even if it's like a one-on-one, basically, because no one else is interacting, you might trust that person to get more, like, for you to get more personal about your life. But there's all the other people watching, and you don't know who they are, so you can't trust them. There might be people watching that just because they want to take you down, or because they're waiting for you to say something dumb so that they can jump in and be the aha, like that person. And so I think it's very natural, like on Facebook comments, man, I don't get very personal at all, but I choose purposefully to get fairly personal with people when I'm face to face with them, because I want them to feel like they can get personal with me and we can have kind of a real conversation. But I'm also kind of like, there's a thing I'm doing where they can tell I'm entrusting something to them, and I'm wanting that to have a good effect on both that dialogue and our relationship. So I know that you both have been talking a lot secretly about virtue signaling,
trying intentionally a secret.
Well,
you've been doing other things.
Yeah. I didn't want to be in on the conversations. Just yesterday, we're all in a brainstorming meeting. I'm like, I'm done offering value to this thing. I've got other things to do. So you guys keep talking.
It's good time management.
Yes, this is a philosophy team. You guys go and do the philosophy, and I'll go do the administrative, boring stuff. And so you and I have been talking for years about this virtue signaling concept, ever since we shot the course, basically. And I am still without an answer as to how to think about it. And so I'm really hoping that you both have come up with some kind of a solution or something to this. Yeah?
Yes, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
Okay.
But it's complicated, and it'll take some time.
Okay, so if that's not a good teaser for coming back in 2 weeks to hear something awesome, then I don't know what is.
I don't think anybody has talked about virtue signaling in the way that we're going to talk about it in the next podcast. I haven't seen it, and I have looked because it's so confusing, and I've been looking for help. So it'll be very helpful.
I'm so excited we have a philosophy team then. Yay!